Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. I wanted to do a review today on the Cranes' debut album from 1986 called um, Fuse. I think it's called Fuse, right? Been a long night. Congratulations to the Los Angeles Dodgers um, for winning the championship last night. That was amazing, awesome playoffs. Freddie Freeman, Otani, Mookie Betts, Walker Buehler, just amazing team, amazing series. But it's always strange when you're. I mean, it's great when your sporting team wins the championship, but sometimes it's hard not to feel like there's some higher level going on when it comes to the gambling and the fixes involved in some of these games. Are just so wild. You know, how can the Yankees go up 5-0 and 5-0 with their best pitcher at home? Everybody thinks they're going back to LA, and then the Yankees make some simple mistakes, and we tie up the game and end up winning it. You know, with like our last pitcher on the that we can pull in as a starter. You know, it's just which if you guys know the experience of the Dodgers, that like never worked before us bringing in a starting pitcher like to close out a game, let alone a series or let alone the World Series. Just I'm just really happy for Dave Roberts. He's just an amazing person. Um, I don't know if you guys are baseball fans, but hockey's my favorite sport, but baseball is probably close second or third. I do like basketball as well, and a lot of other sports. I like board games and all kinds of things. Anything competitive, I like. I can really watch any sport, really. Um, I watched a lot of the Olympics. I can watch anything that's competitive. Um, but I'm just really happy for Dave Roberts. I got a chance to meet him in 2002 when he was playing for the Dodgers, and they had this um, you could go down to the field and meet the players, and they would kind of walk around the circle, and all the fans that stayed after the game could say hi to introduce them, or just say hi or whatever. And Dave Roberts came out, and he was the only one I really wanted to meet. Maybe Eric Gagne, who was the closer at the time, was an amazing pitcher. Maybe him, and I can't really think of anybody else at the time. I'm sure I had a couple other favorite players like Sean Green, and but I wanted to meet Dave Roberts. I loved the way he played, and there was just something special about him. And he was a little bit of a late bloomer. Getting in the league. I think he didn't get into the league like he was 26 or 28. He had a really strong season with the Dodgers, stole like 40 bases, hit like 290. But, I don't think the Dodgers kept him for more than like 2 or 3 years, and then he went off to Boston. And, but I just wanted to meet him, and then so he came around, and I didn't really prepare what I was going to say. And so I just, he got to me, and obviously he's like 5'6", and I'm like 6'7", and he's just like, "Hey," and I was just like, "Hey," and like, I had no idea what to say to him. I just wanted to shake his hand, but I was like, I just wanted to, meet you. I just love the way you play, and you got a great heart, and we all love watching you play. So thank you. And he said, "Oh, I really appreciate that, thank you," or whatever it was, and it was just like the highlight of going to Dodger Stadium that day. And I haven't met very many baseball players in my life, but a handful of LA Dodger players over the course of my life, and that's always been the most. And then he went on a couple years later and had that amazing run with the Red Sox and stole that base and started their comeback from down 3 games to none. And he's always had a kind of an up and down career as a manager, but I'm really happy that he made all the right decisions in this playoffs, and he's going to go down as a Hall of Fame manager, and he might not have had the best decision making, in the past and before, but because he makes decisions with his heart. But I mean, talk about a player's coach. Like nobody knows the team better or cares about his players more than Dave Roberts. So hats off to you, Dave, and Dodgers Nation, and congratulations. So yeah, this video is about the Cranes debut album. So I got a chance to. I don't have too much experience with Cranes. I did get a chance to see them live, and that's when I first heard them and first knew about them was when they opened up for The Cure in 1992 during their Wish tour. I got a chance to see The Cure, and there's Cranes, and also Dinosaur Jr. It was, I think, June of 1992 at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, and that's where the concert was. And kind of a funny story. I went with my brother and my dad. I mean, if I'll talk about my dad a lot through my videos. He was such an inspiration in supporting me, sharing music. Like I would, for years from when I was like 10 to like till I'm probably till I drove a car, and then once I got my license, then I wasn't home that much. But from when I was like 10 to 16, um, one of my favorite things to do was get my homework done or whatever, and then do my top 40 list for the week, and play it for my dad. And he would come into my room, and I'd play music for him and the newest releases I got. And and he was always really supportive of me playing music. And that's always been my favorite thing to do, is play people music, share music with people, find music, going to record store shopping. I went to a record store yesterday. That whole searching, finding, listening, and sharing of music has always been the most favorite thing I've ever wanted to do. I was really good at sports. I was really good at other things. I really enjoyed cars, and I had a car club when I was like 18 years old, or I think it was 18 or 19. I started a car club, and we were really into that. And I probably could have done something more and turned that into a business, especially in Southern California in the early 90s. It was kind of, we were way ahead of the curve in our city as far as like tuning imports and stuff like that. And I was really into that stuff, and who knows, could have turned it into a business. There's a lot of things throughout my life that I could have turned into a business or a career, but I just don't have the full 100% heart that I do with music. And it's hard to have a career in music if you're not a musician. you know, I've done pretty much everything else, but not on the level where I can make a full career at it, and that's be my only job. Right now I'm doing multiple small music jobs to sort of have a career, at least not work in corporate in the last 6 years or so. But it's so my dad was always there to support, and that's kind of where it all kind of stems from. Love for music. He always really inspired that. And one of the cool things is we were at the Cure concert. My dad was a teacher, and so we're at the Cure show, walking around, probably before the band started or in between bands or what have you. And a group of his students, he was teaching like 7th or 8th grade at the time. A couple of his students see him, and they're like, "Oh my God, Mr. Humphrey's here!" And so my dad got a kick out of it. He was like the coolest teacher in the school that week, and they all, they're like, they totally, you can imagine like being a student at 8th grade and sort of being a little bit rebellious, and then see your teacher at the same concert as you, right? So I mean, it's got to be a kind of a cool thing. So he was, I'm sure they really respected him and liked him, because my dad was a really fair, nice teacher. But I'm sure he got a little bit of a cool factor on when he went back to school, and they were all like, Mr. Humphrey was at the Cure concert. And so he got a kick out of that, and that always kind of, that story kind of made me happy, because that always kind of reaffirmed what I was listening to was different and unique, and appreciated on a different level. And that was always a cool thing. But Cranes were the other thing, during that day. And I probably remember the Cranes concert maybe even more so than the Cure, because the Cure, it was my favorite band even then. And going to see the Cure was, it's like going to see any band that you really, really love. It's it's good, but it's like you might get excited by different songs they play, but you kind of know what to expect. Where you see somebody else that you don't know, or somebody else that you go to and you've never seen before, you might enjoy that concert a little bit more because it's the first time, and or you experiencing something that you haven't experienced before. The Cure, I'd seen them before, and stuff like that. So the Cranes actually kind of impacted me a little bit more. So I was just like, well, this is really unique. But at the time, the Cranes, even 1992, it was really hard to get their music or ever find their music in the store. And I didn't wasn't like scouring every record store for their music, but I just never came across their music. And so, fast forward, excuse me, about 32 years later to earlier this year, and I was doing some music reviews online, and I saw that the Cranes were starting to reissue their early albums. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. I have to check this out. So I finally got a chance to check out a couple of their albums, and actually listen to them. And then when I was doing this shoegaze slash dream pop slash indie pop shoegaze list, I was collecting here to do these videos for these 2 week period on me doing videos on the band. I figured why not throw in the Cranes debut album, which I haven't heard yet, and at the time, and I just got a chance to hear it. So yeah, that's the background with me and the Cranes. So I was still fairly new to them and just listened to a few of their records this year, coincidentally, and then I decided to pick Fuse to release as part of this video highlight on shoegaze and dream pop and indie pop. So yeah, let's get into the album. So this band was formed in 1985 in England, in Portsmouth. Basically, it's a brother and a sister combo, Alison Shaw and Jim Shaw. I think they had about three or four, maybe about four records, I think, from 86 to 97, and then they took a break for a couple years, and then they've been going for the last 25 years or so. So there is more to check out in the last 25 years. I've been focusing mostly on their 90s music and this one in the 80s. This one was released on cassette, originally, and didn't really even get put onto cassette till the 90s. So this is definitely a raw sounding album, a raw sounding debut album. It's very much sounds like a demo, but it's an interesting blend of sort of electronic, and I wouldn't even really say electronic because it's kind of more of a blend of like experimental, maybe, and there's a touch of folk music in there. It's a touch of pop music. It's definitely kind of like post punk as far as how it's recorded. It's kind of got that kind of colder sound or stark sound. It's definitely a creative duo, and it's creative, unique music, and it definitely precedes, in my opinion, although I'm not an expert on folk music, that's for sure. It's hard for me to compare it to anything that was put out, in 1986 that was similar to this. I mean, because there's an experimentalism going on, there's a folk going on, there's a dream pop sort of going on. It's a really interesting sound. It almost sounds like if you put rock and roll and alternative music and sort of pushed it through an effects box, and we're just kind of like playing with the overall stereo spectrum, and you were just kind of almost like tuning in, not really tuning in a radio, but just kind of limiting the bandwidth of what's coming out of your speakers. It just has that kind of kind of compact, kind of distant sound. Is it indie experimental? Is this album indie experimental? Maybe that would be a better genre for it. It's really hard to put them in a genre box with this album. Unique production, no doubt. There's 8 songs on here, so it's it definitely screams demo. There's really I don't think there's really any song that really stands out like this would be a pop hit or alternative hit or an indie hit or a college radio hit. It's not experimental to the point where it's hard to listen to or anything like that. It's just very unique. Um, you look at the first track, Pillow Panther, it's called. Really cool production, nice rawness, cool sound. There's a surprising element of funk in this song, which is so different, which is, something to do with the bass line. It just has a little bit of funk to it, which makes it even more strange. It's a really hard album to rate, this album. Is it you're trying to appreciate the experimentalism of it, but it's not as catchy as you hoped it would be because it's dream pop or shoegaze, sort of titled. Um, they even put on here that when I was looking at the notes that for this release that some people even labeled it industrial, which I guess lends to the experimentalism, but there's definitely nothing industrial dance about it. Maybe it's sort of industrial experimental. There's just this will throw you for loops when if you're trying to say what genre it is. It just you can't put this in any kind of genre. I gave the first track 2.5 stars. I like the next two tracks a little bit better. Fuse and Valentine gave both those 3 stars. Really like the bass line and the beat on Fuse. It's definitely a little different. You have to excuse me, got a little bit of allergies. Track 3 is Valentine. Kind of has a darker rolling bass line with nice heaviness to the entire track. That was also 3 stars as well. The fourth track, Gas Ring, 2.25 stars. It's alright, pretty good. Things that I like, 2.5 stars. Um, she sings. She has an interesting voice too. It's kind of like she almost sings this song in like a punk way, which is kind of odd, for the sound. It's hard to compare her voice to somebody. Just very unique. Like hits some really high notes, and then it's a little playful. You know, it kind of sounds like a child a little bit. It's just really interesting. Track number 6 is Wrench, 3 stars. Then my favorite track on the album is called Fracture, track number 7. I really like the heavier guitar on this one. It's kind of doubling the voice. One you sort of hear on the left side, and then the right side's a little bit more distant, so it has like a interesting kind of stereo spectrum and distance kind of going on in the song with her voice. There's really nice harmony in it as well. I got 3.25 stars, and then New Liberty closed it out with 2.25 stars. A solid track. As far as the opportunities on the album, it's a very experimental album. I would say experimental like it's a sound collage, or it's really odd sounding. It's like a strange folk pop, but it's not really pop. It's again, it's just I can't. Every time I try to put it in a genre, I just kind of like almost get there, but it's not quite. Um, I don't know. Obviously, this probably the budget on recording the album wasn't really strong. It was on basically a no-name label and was released on cassette only. So I'm assuming it was probably recorded on a 4-track, cassette player or something, raw with not too much instruments. And for that, it sounds really interesting, even more so because they could be doing a lot more with less equipment, which I really appreciate. And in the '80s, that's really cool. It definitely has the kind of DIY cassette culture kind of attitude of the early '80s, which is cool. Definitely has a raw sound to it. It's kind of hard to say if they wanted to make pop music on this or they wanted to make some sort of sound collage / music concrete / experimental, and then it sort of turns into something and they sort of put some pop on it. Um, you're not sure which kind of direction the album's going, so it seems like it's a balance of both. There's a little bit of sort of pop music, but not really. So it's a really interesting combo, but you don't really know if they're really kind of aiming for one or the other. Um, the later albums are a lot more accessible than this one is, in my opinion. A lot more polished. They kind of evolved their sound and everything like that. This one's definitely an interesting listen. When I divide up the songs, or I add up the songs stars, I got 21 and 3/4 stars divided by 8, so it's a 2.71. Again, it was really hard, which is a good score. You know, I think it's a good album. I rated it 62 out of 100, so at the kind of lower part of good. I find it an interesting album, but it is a very tough album to score. It's kind of hard to say a track is bad or a track is really good. Like they all seem like they're good or very or slightly very good. I have 3 tracks, 4 tracks rated very good, and 4 tracks rated good. So feel pretty confident about that score. But it is a really hard album to score in general. I'm curious if you've heard the album, what you think of it, and also I'd be curious if you could point out some things that, if you know this album really well, or you know the Cranes, where their kind of direction came from this into the other albums. I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are when it comes to the Cranes' overall music or their evolution, and this album specifically. Be curious if you could kind of give me some guidance on that, because again, I'm fairly new to the Cranes' music, only really having heard their stuff this year, besides seeing them in concert like 32 years ago. So yeah, kind of an interesting story. So if they become a band that I really like, from what I've heard 2 other albums, and I like those albums a little bit more. It'd be an interesting story to come full circle from me seeing a concert to then me actually getting a chance to buy some of their reissues of their music and enjoying it 30 years later. But yeah, that's my review on the Cranes debut album, Fuse, 62 out of 100. All right, thanks so much.